With NFL Sunday action now officially complete and just Monday Night Football to be played here for Week 2, I've got 10 waiver wire pickups for Week 3 fantasy football that I'm going to toss your way here in today's episode. If you're new around here, you need to make sure you drop down, click that subscribe button, and turn the bell on. That bell's got to be on, of course, because if you can race here and get yourself on these videos early, there's a better chance I can answer your guys' questions. I'm here to be an interactive tool for you all and help you crush your leagues this season, but of course, obviously the earlier you get here, the better chance and likelihood that I can get around to you guys that aren't in the Discord server or are a part of our exclusive membership from our website, sizzlefantasy.com, which of course you can check out if you're interested in that. But we've got 10 early waiver wire candidates here early on a Monday morning. Let's dive into it. Alrighty, here we go with our priority ad for this week. As of right now, and I'm recording this fresh after Sunday Night Football, it looks like Jeff Wilson Jr. is still the top name to add in my book. He is just owned in 60.6% of ESPN fantasy football leagues. That's where I get that metric from that you see beneath his name here on the screen. And of course, Jeff Wilson Jr. is no lead workhorse running back one, but what he was today for the 49ers in a win against the Seattle Seahawks was the hot hand for this team. He was the player that saw the most rushing opportunities out of the backfield, 18 total rushes for 84 yards, 4.6 yards per carry, showing an improved efficiency over his reserve work that he did last week in relief of Elijah Mitchell. Of course, the one troubling dynamic here is that Kyle Shanahan did say just that, and that was that he's going to feed the hot hand for this team. They really tried to get Tyrion Davis-Price involved in this game, but his efficiency was far lower. We'll talk about him a bit later in today's episode. But Jeff Wilson Jr. playing the key running back position here for fantasy lineups is my top pickup again this week. That 60% marker, which you'll see is kind of a standard for a lot of names here after some of these guys got scooped up after week 1 action, but continue to add him here. He could even be a pick up and sell high candidate. We'll talk about that later in the week potentially as a name that I like to dump off of as a temporary starter for this 49ers backfield. Curtis Samuel, another player rostered in a very respectable amount of leagues here, but I still feel it's very important if you haven't picked up Curtis Samuel, if he's floating around there on your waiver wire, owned in just 2/3 of ESPN leagues, you have to do so. Right now, in back-to-back games, he has shown us that he is the top dog in the volume category for this Washington Commanders offense. Carson Wentz has had back-to-back 27-point fantasy games, 300-plus yard performances, 3-plus touchdown performances. Curtis Samuel's found the end zone in 2 of those games. And again, Samuel is a player who has 20 total targets or averaging 10 targets per contest across these first 2 weeks. So this is a big deal here. A player that was added in 57.5% of leagues this past week. That number, he should be getting really close to the 80-85% number. There are some shallower leagues, your 4, 6, and 8-man leagues out there where he's not going to be rostered. But anything 10 and up, he is a must-have, maybe even in some 8-man leagues that have some deeper roster spots and bench places. Maybe you've got multiple flex in those flex positions in those formats to try and thin things out a little bit here. Samuel is definitely my top wide receiver right now heading into this week's games. Let's jump into another Commanders receiver. This video is starting off very similarly to our Week 1 episode. If you check that video out, of course, that was one of our most popular videos last week. There was a lot of good content in there. This week, we've got some new names, of course, here, but these top 3, man, we got to be picking these players up. These are difference makers for teams in the flex positions, and with how the Commanders offense has played here in 2 games, it looks like Jahan Dotson is going to be a very viable target as well. He's owned in 60.7% of ESPN formats and is a big play waiting to happen. For a smaller player, I loved him coming out of college. Wasn't expecting him to be this good in the red zone, though. Dominating contested catch situations and being a player that makes his presence felt in the red zone. He's got, 3 touchdowns through 2 weeks now. Very, very active again in that red area. That's something huge to see. And his elite speed and athleticism gives him legitimate vertical assets in terms of the big splash plays he can make on this offense. So again, Jahan Dotson, someone I'm looking to add this week. Go out there and grab him. Moving into the quarterback position here, our priority ad at this position is Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. absolutely balled out here, owned in just under 2/3 of ESPN formats, 64.3%. What a day he had, coming back, outscoring the Ravens 28-3 in the fourth quarter and making a really clutch crunch time win here. I believe it was Jalen Waddle who went up and grabbed the game-winning touchdown reception. And man, this team did some really, really good stuff in that fourth quarter. 469 yards passing for Tua this week, 6 passing touchdowns. He did have a couple of bad picks, but 38 fantasy points on the week. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle made things happen here. These are the guys that are making Tua's hay right now. He had 361 of that 469 yard total, so 108 yards went to other players. 361 of them went to those top 2 dogs. Those guys are arguably 2 of the best after the catch receivers in the National Football League, and of course, stretching the field vertically, they can do some dang good things as well. So 4 touchdowns again combined between those top number 1 and 2 wide receivers. 19 targets for Jalen Waddle this week. I believe it was 13 for Tyreek Hill, who left temporarily due to cramps. I'm not expecting these types of numbers again. It was a unique situation, being down 25 points, having to come back 28-3 here in the fourth quarter. Not something that's going to be playing out a large majority of the time, if not ever again this season. But this passing offense has efficiency written all over it, and it has kind of low needs for Tua. Get the ball in these dudes' hands, throw it downfield, throw it up for them. They both won some contested grabs today, and let them make that magic happen after the catch. He is definitely someone who looks as if in my rest of season quarterback rankings, he'll be cracking that top 12 category and getting into that QB1 group. Carson Wentz, we've been talking a lot of Commanders today. There's another Washington Commander on the list here for today's episode. This offense was very underrated in draft season. We saw last week a lot of people went and picked up Carson Wentz. This week again, he's someone I definitely like adding onto my rosters. Owned in just 53.7% of leagues. Like I said when we were talking, it was either Curtis Samuel or Jahan Dotson segment. Back-to-back 300-plus yards games. Back-to-back 3 touchdown or more performances. 7 total on the season. 27 fantasy points in QB standard scoring here. But I mean by standard is not like standard scoring for running backs and wide receivers, but just the baseline, default setting for fantasy quarterback scoring in ESPN's formats. 27 back-to-back point weeks for Wentz here. So really, really good receiver core for him as well. He might have a top 3 wide receiver room that goes punch for punch with almost any other receiver core in the National Football League now. Maybe it's not a healthy Tampa Bay. Maybe it's not the Cincinnati Bengals, but Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel are names that are making themselves felt, and their presence is definitely felt by defensive coordinators when they're trying to game plan and scheme how they're going to stop Terry McLaurin, how they're going to stop Jahan Dotson, now they're going to stop a guy like Curtis Samuel doing a lot of damage out of the slot, and a player that has a lot of involvement in the receiving game as well. So he's also got really talented running back skilled playmakers out of the backfield, and of course Logan Thomas, the tight end, who might just be that next name you're seeing on the board here. Let's dive into the tight end position now. Tyler Higbee, someone who has definitely been on my radar here the last 2 weeks. I thought it was an anomaly. I thought it might have been a little bit of a fluky game in week 1, coming out there having 11 targets in that opening contest. I thought, hey, it's the Cooper Kupp show right now. He doesn't trust Allen Robinson. He's going to have to spread the love elsewhere. But he comes out this week, 9 targets again here, 7 receptions, 71 yards, 7 targets in the first half for 50 yards. He is the safety blanket in the middle of the field Matthew Stafford has been looking for, and he has definitely carved out himself a weekly role in this offense, in this lineup here. And this is definitely every single season we see it. There's a waiver wire tight end or 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 in a great year. They come out, they surprise us, and they really show up in lineups in a big way. Higbee is definitely looking early like he's one of those players for this season. Let's dive back into the running back position now for the Arizona Cardinals. I apologize if you can hear me flipping my notes back and over, back and forth. You get the point. Eno Benjamin and Darrel Williams are 2 running backs that I'm really looking to roster this week. It's a tough call to say right now exactly which of these 2 players should be the higher preference, but James Conner left the contest against the Raiders early with an ankle injury. One of these guys is going to need to step up. My assumption here is it's going to be kind of a 1-2 punch, not necessarily a committee-style approach, but it will be a dual-headed monster. We saw Darrel Williams, who I believe is the next name up here on the slides. I'll make sure, yes, it is. In fact, Darrel Williams, we'll just toggle to him for a second here. They are both owned in under 4% of leagues. I apologize, I forgot to put that percentage up for both of these players. It is 3.9 for Eno Benjamin, 3.7 for Darrel Williams. Now, maybe we get news in the next couple of days here that James Conner is okay and that he'll be fine for week 3. But my assumption right now, he didn't come back to that contest. I'm looking for other options here, and I'm definitely looking for someone to step up to the plate and definitely make that difference for my team, especially if I was the James Conner owner. So both guys were sprinkled in both phases of the game. Benjamin had 11 touches, 4 targets, 3 receptions, and 51 scrimmage yards. For Darrel Williams, it was 8 rushing attempts, 59 yards, a rushing touchdown, and 2 receptions on 3 targets. Next up here, we're going to talk Tyrion Davis-Price, the running back for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, he is currently second in the pecking order without Elijah Mitchell. The reason I have him on here as well is because in the ground game, he was out-touched 18-14. Of course, Jeff Wilson Jr., the priority add on the list for this week, the guy that we assessed to be kind of the leader for this backfield heading into this game, was the guy, but ultimately Davis-Price was very involved as well. Now, as soon as next week, this is more of a pickup for deeper, 12 and 14 man leagues. Maybe you've got multiple flex positions to kind of even things out a little bit and make an even more stressed emphasis on those bench player roles here. But for me, Tyrion Davis-Price is someone that I think has some longer term value here. You still got roughly 2 months without Elijah Mitchell. If something were to happen to, of course, Jeff Wilson Jr., Tyrion Davis-Price becomes a lot more valuable to your roster. And I think that we could potentially see a little bit of a shifting up of the situation here over time. Kyle Shanahan, like I said, will feed the hot hand. And if he deems that Tyrion Davis-Price is that player, now what I'm going to say here is he is not that player this week. This is not a guy who impressed me more so than Jeff Wilson Jr. did this week. TDP was not very efficient. At the end of the day, I don't think that week 3 is his week to be in starting lineups. But I do think that compared to Jordan Mason, this is the more valuable rookie running back to have rostered right now. So again, those of you playing in deeper formats, go out and add him. Our last Washington Commander for today is Logan Thomas, their tight end, owned in 17.8% of leagues. He's seen 5 or more targets in back-to-back games and has a really good passing offense at his disposal. Carson Wentz, like I said, has been tearing it up. Back-to-back 300-plus yard games, 7 touchdowns total on the season. Logan Thomas hauled in one of those touchdown grabs this week, and with the emphasis on those other players, this seems like one of the better red zone options for this team. He's not the most shifty. He's not the best route runner, of course, but he is the biggest body, and at times that is valuable over other players. Like I said, Jahan Dotson's really good at those contested catch situations. Curtis Samuel can break in or out. He can be used in the run game. You can do a ton of stuff with him there, and of course, Terry McLaurin is just a really good X-wide receiver, but Logan Thomas has value in that area of the field. If you're looking for a stream tight end, maybe your tight end has been underperforming lately, and you're looking for something to kind of shake up the scenery here, Thomas is definitely a name worth considering, as is Gerald Everett, owned in just 30% of ESPN leagues after this past week. Had a really nice game against the Kansas City Chiefs. He plays for the LA Chargers, rather. 3 receptions on 4 targets in week 1 for 54 yards and a touchdown. A really nice grab against the Raiders in that game. He comes back out this week without Keenan Allen on the field and goes 6 receptions on 10 targets for 71 yards. Did have potentially the game-losing blunder that caused a pick 6 by Justin Herbert, but without Keenan Allen, we saw Herbert's trust in him, his dependability on him on Thursday Night Football. If he continues to get kind of those safety blanket middle of the field looks, this could be a very underrated player at this tight end position and someone that does put up top 12 numbers here on occasion this season. And the last name we'll talk about for today is Nelson Agholor. This is another really deep roster ad here, owned in just 0.6% of leagues. But Agholor definitely has some standalone value in this Patriots offense. The one thing he does that not really anyone else does for this football team is stretch the field vertically and stress the defense downfield. Without Tyquan Thornton out there, there's really no one else that does this. We saw Jacoby Myers have nearly a double-digit reception, triple-digit yardage game. He had 9 for 95 this past week. He is clearly the volume wide receiver 1 for this team. He's nothing flash. He's not going to go out there and win your week, but a really solid flex play. If you're looking for a more high upside flex opportunity when you're playing matchups that have, for the Patriots, that have some weaker coverages on the back end, maybe they've been letting up some of the larger plays in the league over the course of the season. Obviously, more data will be accrued on that throughout the season, but Agholor definitely has that vertical ability here. He caught 6 of his 6 targets this week for the team lead in receiving yards, 110 yards, again, catching 100% of his targets and a receiving touchdown. So a really nice game. He had 5 targets in week 1. Didn't really convert that into anything there, but the point being, you're getting consistency with these 5+ target games. Mac Jones wants to be able to have that defense at least respecting the deep ball, and if he hits it like he did on occasion, like he did frequently this week, you've got yourself a a viable high upside flex play. So he needs those deeper downfield targets. He's not a volume play, but definitely someone in the efficiency category that brings a lot to the table. So that was actually more than 10 players for today's must-adds list. We're going to get more information on Monday after we watch the Bills and the Titans. We're going to get more information after the Eagles and the Vikings game. God forbid something were to happen to one of the marquee players in those matchups. We would have to obviously reevaluate and add some players to the list here. Maybe make another shorter episode updating things a little bit. But after Sunday's games, after the information we have right now when I'm recording this video regarding running back situational health and all that great stuff, obviously we had Trey Lance go down this week. I left Jimmy G off the list though, just because I'm not super high on what he brings to the table as a fantasy quarterback. Those types of things though do warrant conversation and discussion, and of course we will talk through all that continually here throughout the rest of week 3 fantasy football. So one more time to recap, Tua Tagovailoa this week. We've got the must-add player. The priority add was Jeff Wilson Jr. Really like me some tight ends with Tyler Higbee, Logan Thomas, Gerald Everett. Curtis Samuel's our priority wide receiver still. Another name I'll just toss out there, owned in 1.4% of leagues as the wide receiver 1 for the Colts this week, was Ashton Doolin. Definitely their most productive player. Really liked streaming him this past week. Had 6 targets in back-to-back games, 5 for 79 this week against the Jags in a shutout, unfortunately. Another nice add in deeper 12-man leagues, but once Pierce and Pittman come back, not so much work will be there for him still. And then Benjamin / Darrel Williams, you might want, you've got over a day, over 24 hours from the time I'm posting this episode until your waiver wire, transactions process. So keep your ear to the ground. Of course, I'll be here for you as well, but we might hear more information on that situation. The snap count percentages are not out yet from that game. I wasn't watching that game snap for snap charting things, and even if I were, it is a bit unreliable because Connor played in part of that game. So we'll have to dive deeper into those numbers and kind of assess that throughout the week here. But then one more time, Carson Wentz, our other player on the list today. So those were our, cluster of must-add players for this week. If you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like button. Check out the SFS channel. Subscribe if you're new around here. And I also posted today my top 10 takeaways and lessons learned from week 2 fantasy football. So check out that video. I'll see you there. Peace out.